Welcome to another Goji Center video. In today's video, we'll be doing a 10 brutal ways to die in Jurassic World Rebirth. Now, they have done 10 brutal ways to die on Kong Skull Island, the Hollow Earth, and now they're doing Jurassic Park. And this is the newest installment for Jurassic World Rebirth. Let's see what they have in store for us and react to it.
Today on Goji Center, we travel back to the Jurassic universe to a new island introduced to us in the latest outing, Jurassic World Rebirth. With new creatures comes new dangers, and with new dangers comes new ways to die. So hang tight, because today on the analysis platform, we'll simulate in detail what happens when playing God goes off the rails, and our own creations come back to bite us in the ass in the most gruesome ways possible.
Woo!
This isn't for the weak, so if you have the guts to make it to the end, prove it! Smash that subscribe button and witness, for the first time ever, 10 ways to die in 3D. It only gets messier from here.
Yeah.
Meet today's test subject. You may have seen him before in a previous video involving a couple angry apes. Thankfully, the drugs wore off from last time and he's ready to go on his next adventure. Unfortunately, YouTube has become a bit soft, so we'll be switching to hologram mode every now and then for the really nasty parts. Willow here, a new volunteer and channel member of Goji Center, will manually switch on and off between modes. Without further ado, let's get started with our first simulation. Number 1, Dark Agony. Aside from getting shredded and eaten alive by a hungry theropod, perhaps the next worst thing is getting shredded and eaten alive while blinded. At least when your eyes aren't out of commission, you would at least know when or where the next blow would come from. And you might even pull off a ridiculous stunt like Owen did. No, just kidding. In all likelihood, especially if you're by yourself confronted by InGen's Dilophosaurus, the lights would go off for you a lot faster and at range. Thankfully for Miss Delgado, the Dilo wasn't already all that hungry anymore and likely didn't want to deal with a big T-Rex afterwards, lest she'd share the same fate as Nedry and his fellow spy Dodgson. So what happened to these folks? And what would have happened to Teresa had the Dilo felt extra bold with hunger? Riot is a big fella. However, if the Dilo manages to aim at his eyes with the dark spitting venom, the burning sensation would make it difficult to see and run away. This is just the type of weapon that neutralizes something known as a fight or flight response, especially against large prey that in this case could have fought back. Riot will no longer be able to fight back effectively, nor will he be able to flee without tripping or running into something, making the Dilophosaurus effectively eat at its leisure. And here's where the agony begins. Dilophosaurus would probably start taking bites out of the softer areas like the back of the limbs, stomach, and groin, consuming them while the prey is still alive.
Damn.
This is very similar to how some canines and hyenas kill prey taller and larger than themselves. Number 2.
Duel of Death.
Something interesting that many sharp-eyed observers noticed in the raptors of St. Hubert was the fact that the raptors were always in pairs. Seen in both the deleted scenes as well as in the actual movie, our best guess is that they may not be forming as large of packs as the other islands as a way to be more spread out and targeting smaller prey to avoid competing with the larger carnivores and escape more notice from their mutant cousins. On one hand, that means fewer big packs to worry about, and on the other, it actually means you're pretty much guaranteed to get jumped by at least 2 velociraptors at the same time. Riot's clone number 2 will be dropped in a room with 2 of these raptors. Knocked to the ground, the claws would be gouged into the flesh to pin the test subject onto the ground. Against a human who would most definitely try to swing back, the velociraptors would incapacitate the prey by targeting the easy-to-bite body parts, such as the arms, and shred through the thicker blood vessels. Now, the following may seem like a very morbid piece of advice, but if anyone does ever find themselves in a situation like this, the best thing to do, and to cut the torturous process short, best give them the chance to bite the body part that will help end it sooner for you. Number 3, Clean Cut. One of the most interesting and distinct cameos in Jurassic World Rebirth was that of this fella, Dunkleosteus. Now, this one in particular is a bit larger than what it actually was in real life, especially after its size got nerfed with more recent evaluations. So, what would this obviously genetically buffed Dunkleosteus be capable of in the oceans of the Jurassic universe? Something like this was used to consuming other armored fish, armored animals that, if not swallowed whole, may not have their head be worth digesting due to all the bone. So, if it didn't swallow anyone whole, which would mean a slow death via a combination of drowning and stomach stomach acid, the victim would likely wind up bisected, since it would be used to biting the upper head off. Dropping Riot into our test tank here, we'll find that this bite, inflicted by jaws that act like shears, would very easily bite through Riot.
Damn!
Does not carry an exoskeleton around. This clean cut means the upper body or the brain would be conscious for a short time as the upper body sinks to the bottom while Riot sees the dunk swim away with his bottom half. This traumatizing image will become more blurry and darker very quickly, and that's the best case scenario. Otherwise, the last remaining seconds would involve enduring smaller reef sharks and carnivorous fish pecking at the conscious remains. Number 4, land and strip. On this island, as a wise man once said, there is no such thing as safe, much less on an island full of mutants. One of these mutants was the result of InGen striving for vertical superiority in an attempt to create a creature that excels at both land and air. These new mutant hybrids were their latest product, Mutadons, measuring at around 16 feet in length and weighing at around 500 pounds. These creatures are heavier than a majority of the other flying animals, and quite frankly a bit too heavy to fly with these proportions. But we got what we got. The very first victim seen in the movie to fall prey to the Mutadons was none other than a velociraptor, and was able to make quick work of it. We learned 2 things here, and would have learned more had half the screen not been covered by someone taking a piss. In this case, the Mutadon decided to attack from above with an ambush, leveraging that weight in conjunction with speed to land a blow that knocked the velociraptor flat on its tail. Secondly, the Mutadon relied mostly on its beak and strong neck muscles to repeatedly slam the raptor on the floor, culminating the attack with a shredding bite. Our Riot clone may not even make it that long with a pulse. The hybrid mutant would dive bomb feet first onto the back or chest of the victim, either paralyzing the spine that very instant or worse, sliding its sharp talons down the unprotected torso. With his chest cavity exposed, the Mutadon could continue slamming the body if Riot had any fight left in him. But more likely than not, the paralysis caused by the initial blow would let the Mutadon begin tearing into what, for the mutant, was a very easy kill. Number 5, Blood Bash. Ember, the name given to the T-Rex with the chunk in Jurassic World Rebirth, was absolutely no pushover. Seemingly lazy at times and chasing the Delgados with no hurry. Today, Ember will actually be hungry and will find it worth their while to chase Riot down a makeshift river we made. Let's see what would have happened in the movie had the T-Rex actually tried a little harder to fish out Ruben Delgado. We are all no strangers to the formidable bite force of T-Rex. Now, if you're new here and watching this just for fun, welcome! We'll have you know that a T-Rex of this size with a bite force of at least 8,000 pounds per square inch concentrated on these 12-inch teeth, from root to tip, would instantly pop someone like a grape. In the water, and in this particular fashion, things might be a bit more messy for Riot. If the river is shallow enough, Riot might end up getting pushed downwards as the T-Rex was lunging at the victim. Anything sticking out of the T-Rex mouth would likely be pressed violently as it bashed against any stones. The water would be colored red, polluted by floating organs, fecal matter, bile, and bone. Upset that you can't see the full color spectrum here? Yeah, we are too. Blame the community guidelines. But don't worry, we have an alternative. Here at Goji HQ, we constantly try to improve the quality of our visuals for the betterment of your education and entertainment. This doesn't come without a cost. Making these videos is expensive, and we can't afford to get demonetized whenever these whack guideline moderators get a whiff of our next 10 ways to die videos. So if you do want to see the full colored gory mess, hit join, or find the link in the description, or scan this. This will give you full access to the uncensored version, as well as other fun channel perks. Live streams with the Goji Center team, members exclusive art contests, updates, and even a chance to be in our videos like Willow here. All funds collected here get reinvested right back into the channel. Alright, enough with that. Let's get back to the carnage. Number 6, Drowned and Quartered. One of the most popular additions to the roster of the new creatures in Rebirth was the Spinosaurus. Returning in both quality and quantity, these Spinosaurus displayed coordination, mutualism with other species, and locomotive prowess. Now, considering how they are almost always in a group and seem to consider humans priority targets, either as food or potential threat, it's quite possible you would wind up getting attacked by multiple ones at the same time. There are many possible scenarios, but you know we're here to pick the most gnarly. As clone number 6 floats in our tank, the first Spino will snap its jaws shut on its bottom half of the body. Although the Spinosaurus does not have the same biting force of a T-Rex, this bite is still strong enough to shatter limbs. Following the action and not wanting to miss out on a few calories, the second Spino swims by to bite on the still-living test subject's upper torso, smashing the skull beneath its cone-shaped teeth. This tearing motion leaves the surrounding water red with chunks of flesh floating down to the tank floor. Number 7, pulverized. Now, what could possibly do that? And even worse than a T-Rex. This next creature isn't a carnivore, but rather the animal with the potential to be the most powerful land creature in the entire franchise. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the the Titanosaurus. In this franchise, a massive sauropod slapped with a more marketable name makes its debut, featuring a very marketable appearance, with a not-so-accurate set of stats. Here's where this part of the episode hits a few variables. Finally, something to rival the Mosasaurus when it comes to size shifting between shots. The most official listings for the Titanosaurus give it a height of just over 15 meters tall. However, on screen, its size tends to increase to anywhere between over 20 meters tall in some shots to ballooning over 40 meters tall in others. This makes the stated 11 or so ton mass even more ridiculous, considering at its largest on-screen size, the mass would be over 3,000 tons. So, what will do the pulverizing? This tail makes up about 18% of its volume.
You're gonna get
is around
big
half its
trap,
overall
bitch!
length and is relatively thin. This means that any force applied to it is going to be all transferred to this relatively thin area. Exceptionally good for swatting any nuisance from InGen's asset spreadsheet, not so good for our test subject. So, it was once proposed that some sauropods with thin whip-like tails could break the sound barrier. In truth, they were fast, but a 2022 reevaluation found that it was not near as fast as these bold claims. The more realistic figure was 27 meters per second or 60 miles per hour. So we'll be conservative with the following figures. If the ridiculous 11-ton metric was used, that would still yield 5 meganewtons of force, sending Riot flying dozens of meters after being split in two. But this kaiju-sized Titano, now, granted, we are taking this 3,000-ton Titano visual literally, this produces around 1.565 giganewtons of impact force in optimal circumstances. No real point to bore you with the calculations, because Homeboy is getting sprayed all over the facility floor. No, we aren't kidding. Something with that much force concentrated on this whip would send so much force ripping through a body that it would exceed the structural strength of all their joints down to the fingers and toes. In other words, you would actually explode. Too extreme? Consider how much force a chomping T-Rex has in just a few hundred kilos of its jaw muscles versus an entire tail of a Titanosaur. Number 8, down the gullet. One of the most gnarly and disturbing deaths seen in Jurassic World Rebirth was that of Leclerc, the nice fellow who made his exit down the big bird's gullet. Seemingly motionless, perhaps if he was unalived right here, it would have spared him from feeling the tight walls of the esophagus and pool of stomach bile that awaited down below. A far more violent, but at least quicker way to go would be getting packed. InGen's cats differed from Biosyn's in that this beak was wider and more robust, still pointed enough to impale lesser creatures and be swung with enough speed to act like a lance. Getting rammed in the back or chest would result in the beak shattering the ribcage and collapsing the lungs. Heart and lungs pushed aside and the arteries shattered. This is a very bloody mess. The aftermath is a corpse with ribs sticking out of the opposite end. Good news is that this method is much faster than getting swallowed, but terrifying for anyone watching. This is actually a scaled-up variant of what some real-life birds like herons can do. Number 9, Tooth Grinder. Another well-received marine creature in the latest outing was Mosasaurus, one who, apart from being the victim of ridiculous size shifting between movies, gave us exquisite kills and sequences in previous movies. In Rebirth, at least, the creators of this film committed to giving this one a massive size upgrade. Measuring up to 100 feet in length, this creature is, according to official estimates, the largest marine predator in the Jurassic universe that we know of so far. Now, given the sheer size of this thing, and if it were to try and eat a human, the victim would have a decent chance of missing most of the jaws and getting swallowed whole. But that's just the first row of teeth. Mosasaurs, like some other closest relatives like snakes, have extra teeth on the pterygoid bone. These were specifically for helping further shred and grip prey when it went down the hatch. So, if someone, Riot Clone number 9, was fortunate enough to avoid getting crushed instantly by the jaws, he would basically be sent through the shredder on the way down, sliced up and ripped into as the muscles in the jaw would repeatedly stab and grind them against these teeth. Riot is a pretty tough fella, so what if he survives this? Anyone who survives would be pushed into the stomach while also bleeding heavily, with acid pouring into the wounds. Blood loss, asphyxiation, drowning, whichever comes first. Number 10. Distorted. No other creature in this list is better at distorting the human figure than the Distortus Rex. Loved and hated by the masses, and would have also been received so had it made its debut in Nublar. This malformed atrocity was still functional enough to breathe, walk, and hunt. Or how else would this thing grow to be 8 meters tall? Part of its success was likely due to its forelimbs, and at the end of these were hands armed with 3 digits, one acting as an opposable thumb. This allowed this animal to reach out, extending its range quickly to ensnare a victim and bring it close to its mouth. From here, we can select from many methods. Instantly crushed by the hands if it Hulk smashed back down hard enough to turn your skull into a pancake, gripped and squeezed between the fingers until your fluids are forced out of your mouth, bitten and snapped into as it holds onto the lower body just to chew you in half like he's eating a candy bar. Getting played with like a toy and swung around, getting bashed against objects until you're bludgeoned to death, getting manhandled and unalived by a dexterous creature like the T-Rex, or Indominus, or Indoraptor, or Scorpius is certainly one of the worst ways to go. The rule of thumb, if it has thumbs, run.
Run! One Riot! One more! Yeah, thumbs! I'm coming for you. This thumb goes up your ass. Bye, bitch! Well, that was 10 Ways to Die in Jurassic World Rebirth. Thanks to Goji Center. Unfortunately, YouTube banned us out, but oh man, we don't see the extra juicy gore. So if you want to see the juicy stuff, go support Goji Center by joining the community. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!